The new hire. The elevators at Meridian Tech opened onto the 23rd floor with a soft chime that sounded far too calm for the storm about to begin. Ethan Cole adjusted his tie in the mirrored panel, trying to steady his breathing. First impressions mattered, especially here. Meridian wasn't just another software company. It was where careers were made, where stock options turned coders into millionaires, and where one mistake could erase years of work overnight. He stepped into the open office. Rows of glass-walled conference rooms lined the perimeter. Inside them, teams argued in hushed urgency over product timelines and investor decks. The center floor buzzed with standing desks, glowing monitors, and the constant hum of ambition. New guy? Ethan turned to see a man about his age leaning back in a chair, sneakers propped on a desk, coffee balanced precariously on his knee. Yeah, Ethan said. Ethan Cole, Data Systems. The man grinned. Welcome to the circus. I'm Marcus Reed, Product Strategy. If it breaks, they blame you. If it works, they blame me. Ethan laughed, tension easing. Marcus had the kind of confidence that filled a room. Easy charm, sharp eyes, and a voice that sounded like he was always halfway to a joke. Before Ethan could respond, a ripple moved through the office, subtle but unmistakable. Conversations paused, heads turned. Marcus muttered, "And there she is." Ethan followed his gaze. She walked through the glass doors like she owned gravity itself. Tall, poised, and impossibly composed, Olivia Chen carried a tablet in one hand and a coffee in the other. Her dark hair fell in a sleek line over a tailored blazer. She didn't rush, didn't hesitate. The entire office seemed to adjust its rhythm to her pace. That, Marcus said, lowering his voice, is Olivia Chen, Senior Operations Manager. She's the reason this place runs. Ethan nodded, trying not to stare. She's impressive. Marcus smirked. Careful, half this floor has had that thought. The other half is lying. As if sensing their attention, Olivia glanced their way. Her eyes met Ethan's for half a second, assessing, unreadable, before she continued walking. But the moment lingered. By noon, Ethan had been handed 3 onboarding documents, 2 system failures to review, and 1 urgent request to attend a cross-team meeting he wasn't remotely prepared for. He entered conference room Delta to find Marcus already there, feet off the desk now, posture suddenly professional, and Olivia standing at the head of the table. "Good, you're here," she said, her tone crisp but not unkind. "We're discussing the Atlas rollout delays." Ethan took a seat, acutely aware of his inexperience. Olivia tapped her tablet. "Marcus, your team projected a 2-week timeline. We're at week 5. Marcus leaned forward. "We hit integration issues with data routing. Ethan's team owns that pipeline." Every eye turned to Ethan. He swallowed. I just started today." A pause. Then Olivia's lips twitched. Almost a smile. "Then welcome to the fire," she said. "We'll solve it together." The tension in the room eased with a few quiet chuckles. For the next hour, Olivia led the meeting with surgical precision, assigning tasks, clarifying dependencies, and cutting through excuses without raising her voice. She didn't dominate the room, she controlled it. Ethan found himself watching her, the way she listened fully before speaking, the way she anticipated problems before they were voiced. Marcus watched her too, but his expression was different. Not admiration, interest. Later that afternoon, Marcus cornered Ethan by the espresso machine. "So," Marcus said casually, "first day impressions?" Ethan shrugged. "Intense, fast. Everyone seems driven." Marcus smirked. "That's one word for it. Another is competitive." He took a sip of coffee, then added, "And what do you think of Olivia?" Ethan hesitated. "She's good at her job." Marcus laughed. "Safe answer, but you noticed her." Ethan didn't deny it. Marcus leaned closer. "Just a friendly tip. Don't fall for her." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Why?" Marcus stared into his cup. "Because she doesn't belong to anyone. She keeps everyone at arm's length, just close enough to make you think you matter." Before Ethan could reply, Olivia's voice cut in behind them. "Marcus, if you spent half as much time on the Atlas backlog as you do giving unsolicited advice, we'd be ahead of schedule." Marcus turned, unfazed. "And if you spent less time eavesdropping, we'd have more privacy." Olivia arched an eyebrow. "Glass walls, Marcus. Not my fault you forget where you work." Ethan tried and failed to hide a smile. Olivia glanced at Ethan. "How's day 1 treating you?" "Busy," he admitted. She nodded. "Good. Busy means you're useful." Then she walked away. Marcus watched her go. Ethan noticed. Over the next week, Ethan found himself pulled into late-night debugging sessions with Olivia overseeing operations. She stayed longer than anyone else, fueled by green tea and relentless focus. Marcus, meanwhile, floated between departments, charming engineers, negotiating deadlines, and somehow always appearing when Olivia did. One evening, as the office thinned out, Ethan and Olivia worked side by side, reviewing system logs. "You're adjusting faster than most," he said. "Trying to. I don't like being the weak link." You're not, she said, simply. The words landed heavier than he expected. Across the room, Marcus watched them, expression unreadable. The rivalry didn't start with shouting. It began with small things. Marcus volunteering to help Olivia before Ethan could. Ethan staying later to solve problems Marcus had flagged. Marcus making Olivia laugh in meetings. Olivia praising Ethan's precision in reports. No one said it out loud, but the office noticed, and in workplaces like Meridian Tech, perception spreads faster than truth. On Friday, Olivia announced a team happy hour. Attendance optional, said she, but recommended. We function better when we remember we're human. The bar was crowded, loud, and far removed from the sterile glow of office monitors. Marcus ordered drinks for the table. Ethan stuck to soda. Olivia arrived last. She didn't stay at one table. She moved, talking, listening, laughing, never lingering too long. When she reached Marcus and Ethan, Marcus handed her a drink. Olivia Chen relaxing? Historic moment, he teased. She smirked. Don't get used to it. Ethan found himself saying, You should relax more. The team might survive. She studied him, surprised, then amused. Maybe, she said. For a moment, the three stood in easy silence. Then a coworker called Olivia's name, and she was gone again. Marcus exhaled. You're braver than you look. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Marcus glanced towards Olivia. You're stepping into a game you don't even know you're playing. That night, as Ethan left the bar, he saw Olivia outside, alone, checking her phone. Long week? He asked. She nodded. They're all long weeks. A pause. Lines in the sand. Monday mornings at Meridian Tech had a rhythm. Keyboards clacking like rainfall, Slack notifications chiming in uneven bursts, and the low murmur of caffeine-fueled urgency. But this Monday felt different. Not because of deadlines, not because of investors, because people were watching. Ethan felt it the moment he stepped off the elevator. Two designers stopped mid-conversation as he passed. Someone whispered his name. Across the room, Marcus was already holding court near the product dashboard, animatedly explaining a pivot strategy. He caught Ethan's eye and gave a casual nod, friendly on the surface, competitive underneath. And Olivia? She was at her desk reviewing reports with her usual precision, as if the undercurrent in the room didn't exist. But Ethan noticed one change. Her door, usually open, was closed. At 10 a.m., the Atlas rollout meeting began. This time, the energy was sharper. Olivia stood at the head of the table. We're presenting to the board in 10 days. No delays, no surprises. Marcus leaned forward. Then we need to simplify the deployment, cut non-essential features. Ethan spoke up. Those features are tied to data integrity. If we cut them, the system becomes unreliable. Marcus turned. Unreliable is better than unfinished. Ethan held his ground. Not when clients trust our data. Silence. The room felt smaller. Olivia's gaze moved between them. Not annoyed, not amused. Calculating. Both of you are right, which means both of you are wrong. They blinked. We're not cutting features, we're accelerating validation. Marcus, reallocate 2 engineers. Ethan, create a streamlined verification protocol. She tapped the table once. Decision made. The meeting moved on, but something had shifted. It wasn't about work anymore. It was about winning. By noon, the espresso machine had become a battlefield disguised as a break area. Marcus stood there with 2 cups when Olivia approached. 1 oat milk latte, he said, handing it to her. She accepted it. You remembered. I remember useful things. Ethan arrived seconds later, stopping short when he saw them. Marcus glanced at him. Timing's everything, man. Ethan forced a smile and reached for a cup. Olivia took a sip, then turned to Ethan. Your verification draft? Send it by 3? Already done, he said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Olivia nodded once. Approval. Simple and direct. Marcus watched the exchange, his smile tightening. By midweek, the whispers had evolved into theories. They're competing for her. No, she's playing them. Marcus has seniority. Ethan has her respect. In a workplace driven by metrics, people loved what couldn't be measured, and Olivia Chen, composed, distant, impossible to read, had become the center of gravity. Wednesday night, 9:47 p.m. The office was nearly empty. Ethan sat surrounded by logs and dashboards, refining the verification protocol. He didn't notice Olivia approach until she set a green tea beside him. You've been here since 7, she said. So have you. She didn't deny it. They reviewed the system together, shoulder to shoulder. Their conversation was efficient, technical, but easy. Too easy. From the glass hallway, Marcus watched them. He hadn't meant to stay late, but seeing the lights on in Olivia's office had pulled him back. He saw Ethan lean closer to show her a screen, saw her nod, their heads nearly touching. Something tightened in his chest, unfamiliar, unwelcome. He turned and walked away. Thursday afternoon, Marcus cornered Ethan near the server room. Walk with me, he said. It wasn't a request. They stopped near the emergency stairwell, the hum of servers vibrating through the walls. Marcus crossed his arms. You're making this personal. Ethan frowned. This is work. Marcus let out a short laugh. You really believe that? I'm here to do my job. And impress Olivia while you're at it? Ethan's jaw tightened. That's not fair. Marcus stepped closer. Here's the truth. I've been here 5 years. I've built relationships. I know how this place works. You walk in, play the quiet genius, and suddenly you're her favorite? I never asked for that. Doesn't matter, Marcus said. You're in my lane. The words hung in the air. Ethan met his gaze. This isn't a race. Marcus's voice dropped. Everything here is a race. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Olivia appeared. Her eyes moved between them, not annoyed, not amused, understanding more than they'd said. Good, she said. Then we're done here. She walked away, but the silence she left behind was louder than any argument. By Friday, subtle alliances had formed. Some engineers gravitated toward Marcus, drawn to his charisma and big-picture thinking. Others preferred Ethan, steady, precise, dependable. Meetings became quieter, more guarded. Jokes stopped landing. Even Olivia's presence couldn't smooth the fractures. Because she was no longer just their manager, she was the prize neither would admit they were chasing. Another team happy hour, mandatory this time. Morale matters, Olivia had said. The bar was louder than before, conversations forced. Marcus stood at the center of a group, telling a story that made everyone laugh, except Ethan. Ethan sat at the edge of the table, nursing a drink he barely touched. Olivia arrived late again. She greeted the group, then surprised everyone by sitting beside Ethan. Marcus's smile faltered, just for a second. You look exhausted, Ethan said. Deadline week. She nodded. You're carrying more than your share. Marcus leaned across the table. We're all carrying weight. Olivia met his eyes. Then carry it without dropping it on others. The table fell silent. Marcus leaned back, hands raised. Noted, but his eyes burned. That night, as the group dispersed, Marcus caught Olivia outside. You're favoring him, he said. She didn't pretend to misunderstand. I'm assigning work based on capability. You're blind if you think that's all this is. She studied him, not angry, not defensive, just tired. Marcus, she said quietly, this isn't high school. He swallowed, realizing too late how he sounded. Before he could respond, she walked away. From across the street, Ethan saw them, the distance between them, the tension in Marcus's posture. He turned and walked the other direction. Back at the office, the Atlas dashboard glowed red with unresolved alerts. Deadlines loomed, tempers thinned, and beneath the surface, a truth neither man would admit had begun to take shape. The disaster hadn't happened yet, but the lines in the sand had been drawn. Cracks in the system. By the following Monday, Meridian Tech no longer felt like a single company. It felt like two camps forced to share the same floor. No one announced it, no memo circulated, but the signs were everywhere. Engineers choosing sides in meetings, Slack channels splitting into private threads, decisions delayed because agreement had become impossible. At the center of it all, Ethan Cole, Marcus Reed, and Olivia Chen. And the Atlas rollout clock now ticking loudly enough for everyone to hear. At 8:12 a.m., the Atlas deployment dashboard flashed its first critical warning. Data validation failure, client sync halted. Ethan saw it before anyone else. He froze, then began typing, pulling logs, checking pipelines, tracing the failure path. Within minutes, Marcus appeared at his desk. Tell me that's a false alarm, Marcus said. Ethan didn't look up. It's not. Marcus exhaled slowly. We present in 8 days. I know. Olivia arrived moments later, drawn by the tension. Status, she said. Ethan turned his monitor toward her. Validation protocol failed during overnight sync. The system flagged inconsistencies and shut down client updates. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. We can't show this to the board. Olivia's voice remained steady. We won't. We'll fix it. She looked at Ethan. How long? He hesitated. If it's what I think it is, 2 days. Marcus scoffed. We don't have 2 days. Olivia's gaze sharpened. Then help him. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. The war had just been drafted into a joint mission. For the next 6 hours, Marcus and Ethan worked side by side, not by choice, by necessity. Marcus traced product logic and user flows. Ethan dissected data streams and validation triggers. Their skills complemented each other, a fact neither wanted to acknowledge. Olivia moved between them, coordinating, clarifying, pushing. Stop defending your territory, she told them at one point. Defend the product. They didn't respond, but they listened. At 2:30 p.m., the entire floor felt the explosion. In conference room Delta, voices rose, not loud enough to be called shouting, but sharp enough to cut through glass walls. Marcus pointed at the screen. Your protocol is too rigid. It's rejecting acceptable variances. Ethan shot back. Acceptable to you, not to the system. Marcus turned to the room. This is what happens when theory overrides practicality. Ethan stood. And this is what happens when shortcuts become policy. The room fell silent. Engineers avoided eye contact. Designers stared at their laptops. Olivia stepped forward. Sit down, both of you. They didn't move. Her voice hardened. Now. They sat. She looked at Marcus. You're arguing for speed. Then at Ethan. You're arguing for accuracy. She tapped the screen. We need both. Find the threshold that satisfies both conditions, or I will assign someone who can. The message was clear. You are replaceable. The argument ended, but the damage, public, visible, and undeniable, had been done. By late afternoon, the story had spread across every department. They almost got into a shouting match. Olivia shut them down. The rollout might fail. In tech companies, confidence is currency, and Meridian Tech's balance was dropping fast. That evening, Ethan found Olivia alone in a conference room, staring at the city skyline. You should go home, he said. So should you, she replied. He hesitated. I didn't mean for this to become personal. She didn't turn. It became personal the moment either of you cared who got credit. He had no answer. After a moment, she added, You're both good at what you do. That's the problem. He frowned. How is that a problem? Because neither of you knows how to lose. Across town, Marcus sat alone in a sports bar replaying the day. The argument, the looks from coworkers, Olivia's ultimatum. He wasn't angry at Ethan. He was angry at himself, for caring, for competing, for needing to win something that had never been offered as a prize. His phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. We need you tomorrow. Don't disappear. He stared at it, then typed back, I won't. But he didn't go home. Tuesday morning brought a fragile ceasefire. Marcus arrived early, coffee in hand, and dropped a folder on Ethan's desk. User variance data. You can use it to set thresholds. Ethan looked up. Thanks. Marcus nodded once. Let's fix this. It wasn't friendship, it wasn't forgiveness, but it was progress. From her office, Olivia watched them, expression unreadable. By Wednesday evening, the validation protocol stabilized. The dashboard turned green. Client sync resumed. The floor erupted in cautious relief. But the celebration felt hollow, because everyone knew how close they'd come to failure, and everyone knew why. Later that night, HR sent a company-wide reminder about professional conduct and collaborative standards. No names mentioned, no incidents cited. Everyone understood. Ethan stared at the email, a knot forming in his stomach. Marcus read it, jaw tightening. Olivia deleted it without opening. The Atlas system was stable. The deadline was still reachable. From the outside, Meridian Tech looked intact, but inside, something essential had fractured. Trust had been replaced by suspicion, collaboration by calculation, respect by rivalry. And at the center of the fault lines stood a woman who had never asked to be fought over, and two men who were only beginning to understand the cost of their war. The disaster hadn't struck yet, but the system, both human and digital, was under strain, and strain, left unresolved, always finds a breaking point. Pressure from above. By Thursday morning, the air on the 23rd floor felt thinner. Not literally, the HVAC system hummed as reliably as ever, but psychologically. The kind of pressure that builds when a company's leadership starts watching closely. And they were watching. At 8:03 a.m., an email from the CEO landed in every senior staff inbox. Subject, Atlas rollout, board readiness. We will conduct a full executive preview in 5 days. No delays, no exceptions. Ensure all systems are stable and presentation ready. Olivia read it once, then closed her eyes briefly. 5 days. Not 10, not 8, 5. Marcus read the same email and muttered, Of course they moved it up. Ethan's stomach dropped when Olivia forwarded it to him with a single line. We adjust. By 9 a.m., conference room Delta had been converted into a war room. Whiteboards filled with timelines, sticky notes marking dependencies, a shared dashboard projected onto the wall like a heartbeat monitor. Olivia stood at the center. No one works in silos anymore, she said. Atlas is the only priority. Marcus nodded. We'll need to cut presentation features. Ethan shook his head. Cutting visuals will confuse clients. Marcus shot back. We're not designing art, we're shipping a product. Olivia raised a hand. Silence. We are delivering clarity, she said. Not shortcuts, not perfection, clarity. She assigned tasks with machine-like precision. But beneath the efficiency, the tension remained, because now the stakes weren't personal, they were existential. That afternoon, 2 vice presidents arrived unannounced. Their tailored suits and measured smiles sent a ripple of anxiety through the floor. Olivia greeted them calmly. We're on track. One of them, Daniel Harper, glanced at the dashboard. We've heard about internal friction. Marcus stiffened. Ethan looked at the floor. Olivia didn't blink. We've had healthy debate. The system is stable. Harper studied her. Good, because the board doesn't invest in teams that can't function. The message lingered long after they left. Teams that can't function are replaced. Late that evening, Marcus approached Olivia in the war room. We can guarantee stability, he said quietly, but only if we temporarily suppress non-critical error flags. Olivia's gaze sharpened. You're suggesting we hide system warnings. I'm suggesting we prevent false alarms during the demo. We fix them after. From across the room, Ethan looked up, having overheard. That's dishonest, he said. Marcus turned. It's strategic. It's misleading. It's survival, Marcus snapped. Olivia's voice cut through. Enough. Silence fell. She looked at Marcus. If we suppress errors and something fails during the demo, we lose credibility. Then at Ethan. If we show every minor warning, we appear unstable. She exhaled slowly. We don't hide errors, we contextualize them. Marcus frowned. That's risky. Ethan nodded. But it's honest. Olivia met both their eyes. We don't lie to survive. We perform. The war room ran past midnight. Engineers dozed in chairs, empty takeout containers piled up, the glow of monitors cast everyone in a pale, exhausted light. At 1:12 a.m., Marcus stepped outside for air. Olivia followed minutes later. You're pushing too hard, he said without turning. So are you. He laughed bitterly. You trust him more. She didn't answer immediately. I trust competence, she said finally. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters here. Marcus turned to face her. And outside of here? For the first time, Olivia looked caught off guard, but only for a second. There is no outside of here this week. She walked back inside. Marcus stood alone under the city lights, realizing he had asked the wrong question, or perhaps the right one, too late. Inside, Ethan stared at the validation logs but couldn't focus. Marcus's words echoed. You trust him more. He didn't want this to be about trust, or affection, or winning. He wanted it to be about the work. But the work had become inseparable from the people, and the people were breaking. At 3:40 a.m., exhaustion made decisions sloppy. An engineer, following Marcus's earlier suggestion to reduce noise in the logs, adjusted an alert threshold, just slightly. Not suppression, just quieting. No one noticed. Not Marcus, not Ethan, not Olivia. The system remained green, the dashboard looked perfect, and a critical anomaly slipped silently past detection. Friday morning arrived with expected calm. The system held. No new alerts. The team moved with cautious optimism. Olivia allowed herself a rare moment of stillness, watching the floor hum with coordinated effort. Maybe, she thought, they would make it. Marcus brought coffee for the team. Ethan cracked a small joke that made two engineers laugh. For a brief, fragile window, Meridian Tech felt whole again. At 11:26 a.m., a client in Chicago experienced a data mismatch. Minor, barely noticeable, automatically queued for review. But the alert never triggered, because the threshold had been raised, because exhaustion had blurred judgment, because pressure had made compromise feel harmless. The fault line widened, silently, invisibly, beneath the surface. From the outside, Meridian Tech appeared to be recovering. Deadlines were met, executives were satisfied, the system was stable. But stability built on overlooked truths is an illusion, and somewhere in the Atlas pipeline, a hidden error was multiplying, quietly, methodically, waiting for the worst possible moment to reveal itself. The love triangle had fractured the team, the pressure had bent their principles, and the disaster, no longer hypothetical, had already begun. They just didn't know it yet. The error that spoke. By Monday morning, the illusion of control had returned. The Atlas dashboard still glowed green, the war room whiteboards were cleaner. Engineers walked with cautious confidence. For the first time in weeks, Meridian Tech felt almost normal. Almost. Because buried in the system logs, deep beneath layers of filtered alerts and adjusted thresholds, the anomaly from Chicago had not resolved. It had replicated. At 9:14 a.m., Olivia's phone rang. She answered with her usual calm. Olivia Chen? A tight voice responded. This is Daniel Ruiz from Northbridge Logistics. We're seeing discrepancies in our shipment data. Olivia's posture straightened. What kind of discrepancies? Inventory counts are off by small amounts, 1 or 2 units per pallet, but it's happening across multiple locations. Small errors, the most dangerous kind. We'll investigate immediately, she said. She hung up and walked straight to the war room. Atlas discrepancy report, she said. Now. Ethan's fingers were already moving. Marcus watched the dashboard, still green, too green. Within minutes, Ethan found the Chicago log, then another, Denver, Phoenix, Atlanta. Each discrepancy tiny, each below the alert threshold, each silently ignored by the system they trusted. Ethan's voice was tight. These should have triggered warnings. Marcus stared at the threshold settings, then his stomach dropped. Someone raised the alert tolerance, he said. Olivia's gaze sharpened. Why? No one answered. Because they all knew. Pressure, exhaustion, survival. The war room filled quickly. Engineers spoke over one another. This isn't a system failure, it's configuration. Who changed the thresholds? I thought it was approved. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. We discussed reducing noise. Ethan turned sharply. We discussed, we didn't approve. Marcus shot back. We didn't forbid it either. Olivia's voice cut through the chaos. Stop. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. This isn't about who suggested what, she said. This is about fixing it. She turned to Ethan. Can we isolate the discrepancies? Yes, he said, but correcting them will reveal the error to clients. Marcus added quietly, if we don't correct them, it gets worse. Olivia nodded once. Then we correct them. The decision was right. It was also devastating. By noon, Northbridge Logistics sent a formal complaint. Not angry, not accusatory, concerned, and CC'd to Meridian's executive team. The email spread through leadership like wildfire. By 1:30 p.m., Olivia was summoned upstairs. The executive conference room felt colder than the war room. Daniel Harper sat at the head of the table. 2 other executives flanked him. Olivia stood alone. We were assured the system was stable, Harper said. It is stable. We identified configuration drift affecting alert thresholds. Corrections are underway. Harper leaned forward. Why were thresholds changed? Olivia held his gaze. Under deadline pressure, the team prioritized signal clarity. The adjustment was not properly reviewed. A pause. Who approved it? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was complicated. Because blame was easy. Because leadership meant choosing what to protect. It was a team oversight, she said finally. Harper's eyes narrowed. That's not an answer. It's the truth, she said. The room went silent. Downstairs, Marcus stared at the threshold log. His earlier suggestion echoed in his head. We can guarantee stability if we suppress non-critical errors. He hadn't changed the settings, but he had planted the idea. And ideas, once spoken, don't belong to one person. Ethan approached him quietly. We'll fix it. Marcus let out a humorless laugh. Fixing code is easy. Fixing trust? Ethan didn't reply. Because he didn't know how. Olivia returned from the executive floor with the same composed expression, but her eyes told a different story. We correct all discrepancies, full transparency with affected clients. Marcus nodded. Executives won't like that. They don't have to like it, they have to defend it. Ethan studied her. And if they don't? She met his gaze. Then we do. The team worked in grim silence. Correction scripts ran. Client notifications were drafted. Every fixed record felt like a confession. At 4:48 p.m., another complaint arrived. Then another. Not catastrophic, not yet, but the pattern was clear. The system had been compromised, not by malice, but by compromise. At 6:15 p.m., Marcus found Olivia alone in the war room. This is my fault, he said. She didn't look up. No, it's ours. I suggested suppressing alerts, and I didn't shut it down hard enough. He shook his head. You're still protecting the team. I'm protecting the truth. The truth is we let pressure bend our judgment. He hesitated. And Ethan? She looked at him then, steady, unreadable. Ethan argued for integrity, and he stayed. Marcus swallowed, because he had nearly walked away. Across the room, Ethan watched them, not with jealousy this time, but clarity. This had never been about winning Olivia. It had been about being seen, respected, chosen. And in chasing that validation, he had helped fracture the very team he wanted to belong to. By nightfall, Meridian Tech had sent 12 client notifications. No contracts canceled, no lawsuits threatened, but confidence, the invisible foundation of every partnership, had cracked. The executives were watching, clients were questioning, the team was exhausted, and the love triangle that once felt like a private tension had become a corporate liability. Because when emotions shape decisions, systems fail, and when systems fail, people pay. The disaster was no longer approaching. It had begun to speak. Exposure. By Tuesday morning, the problem was no longer contained. What began as quiet client discrepancies had evolved into something far more dangerous: visibility. And in the tech industry, visibility without control is a threat. At 8:27 a.m., a junior engineer rushed into the war room holding a phone. You need to see this. She placed it on the table. A headline from a widely read tech industry blog glowed on the screen. Meridian Tech's Atlas platform faces data integrity questions. No accusations, no hard conclusions, just questions. But questions were enough. Marcus exhaled slowly. Who talked? Olivia shook her head. No one had to. Clients talk, vendors talk, patterns leak. Ethan scrolled the article. They're calling it minor inconsistencies. Marcus muttered, for now. By 9:15 a.m., the executive floor was in full crisis mode. Emergency meetings, PR consultants dialing in, legal reviewing client contracts. Olivia was summoned again. This time, Marcus was called too. Ethan remained downstairs, refreshing logs, watching the system like a doctor monitoring a critical patient. In the executive conference room, Daniel Harper didn't bother with pleasantries. This story dies today, he said, or we lose clients. Marcus crossed his arms. We've already notified affected partners. Harper's gaze hardened. Transparency is admirable. Panic is not. Olivia spoke evenly. We did not create panic, we created accountability. One executive scoffed. Accountability doesn't pay retention bonuses. Silence. Harper leaned forward. We need a statement, controlled, reassuring, and we need someone responsible. There it was. Not what happened, not how to fix it, who to blame. Marcus felt the weight immediately. He could say nothing, let the ambiguity stand, let the team share the cost. Or he could tell the truth, that his suggestion had opened the door. He opened his mouth. Olivia spoke first. It was a process failure, she said, not an individual one. Harper's patience thinned. That answer won't satisfy the board. It should, because it's accurate. Harper studied her, then Marcus. And you? He asked. Marcus hesitated. The room held its breath. It was a team oversight, he said finally. The words tasted like ash. Ethan didn't know about the executive conversation. He only knew the system was under strain. Correction scripts were running constantly now. New discrepancies appeared faster than they could be resolved. Not catastrophic, but relentless, like cracks spreading through glass. An engineer approached. We're seeing latency spikes. Ethan frowned. From the corrections? From the volume, she said. The system wasn't built for this many simultaneous fixes. He closed his eyes briefly. They weren't just fixing errors anymore. They were stressing the infrastructure. At 1:02 p.m., an email arrived from Northbridge Logistics. Subject: urgent, service reliability. We need assurance this issue is contained. Continued discrepancies may force us to review our contract. Marcus read the email over Olivia's shoulder. Review our contract, he repeated. That's corporate for, we're leaving. Olivia nodded once. Not yet, but close. Ethan looked between them. We can contain it, Marcus asked quietly. At what cost? No one answered. The war room tension snapped that afternoon. Marcus slammed a marker onto the table. We should have suppressed the alerts for the demo and fixed this later. Ethan stood. That's what caused this. No, half measures caused this, Marcus shot back. We tried to be honest and fast. We failed at both. At least we didn't lie, Ethan said. Marcus laughed bitterly. Tell that to the clients who think we misled them anyway. Olivia stepped between them. Stop, she said. Not loud, but absolute. They fell silent. She looked at Marcus. You're arguing from fear. Then at Ethan. You're arguing from pride. She set the marker down gently. Neither fixes the system. By evening, exhaustion had hollowed everyone out. An engineer cried quietly in the restroom. Two designers argued over wording in a client email. The office, once driven by ambition, now ran on adrenaline and dread. Ethan stared at the dashboard, feeling a weight he couldn't name. Marcus sat motionless, phone in hand, ignoring messages from friends, asking if the news was true. Olivia stood alone by the windows, the city lights reflecting in her eyes like distant fires. At 8:46 p.m., a new alert appeared. Not a discrepancy, a usage anomaly. A third-party integration had begun rejecting Atlas data entirely, automatically. Ethan's voice was barely audible. We're being throttled. Marcus looked up sharply. By who? Ethan said, Midwest Freight Systems. They've flagged our data as unreliable. Silence fell. This wasn't a complaint. This was action. Olivia closed her eyes for a brief second. When she opened them, her voice was steady. This is no longer an internal issue, she said. This is a reputational event. Marcus leaned back in his chair. We're losing them. Ethan stared at the dashboard, feeling the truth settle in his chest. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about rivalry. This was about consequences. And consequences had momentum. By midnight, Meridian Tech was no longer fighting to protect a rollout. It was fighting to protect its name. Clients were watching, executives were calculating, the press was circling, and in the center of it all stood three people who had once believed their personal fault lines were private, contained within glances, meetings, and unspoken competition. They were wrong, because in a workplace, nothing stays private for long, and when personal fault lines intersect with corporate pressure, the collapse doesn't begin with a crash, it begins with exposure. Collapse of trust. By Wednesday morning, Meridian Tech no longer resembled the company it had been 2 weeks earlier. The open office felt quieter, not calm, but guarded. Conversations stopped when someone approached. Slack channels, once filled with jokes and quick solutions, now carried clipped messages and careful wording. Trust, once invisible and abundant, had become a scarce resource. And scarcity changes behavior. At 9:06 a.m., the email arrived. Subject: termination of services, effective immediately. Midwest Freight Systems had pulled out. No negotiation, no grace period, no second chances. Marcus read the email twice, as if the words might rearrange themselves. They're gone, he said. Ethan felt the sentence land like a physical blow. Olivia stood very still. How many accounts depend on their integration? She asked. 7, Ethan replied quietly. 7 clients. 7 potential dominoes. Within minutes, executives flooded the floor. Not to help, to observe. Daniel Harper moved through the office with a tight smile, pausing at desks, asking controlled questions. Is the system stable now? Are other clients at risk? Who approved the threshold change? Each question sounded neutral. Each answer felt like stepping onto thin ice. When Harper reached the war room, he didn't sit. The board meets tomorrow, he said. They will want accountability. Marcus stiffened. Ethan looked down. Olivia held his gaze. You'll have our full report, she said. Harper's expression hardened. I don't need a report. I need a name. Silence. He nodded once. By end of day. Then he left. After the executives departed, the war room felt smaller. Engineers avoided eye contact. One finally spoke. This started with the threshold change. Another added, we were told to reduce alert noise. Marcus's jaw tightened. We discussed it. No one was ordered. Ethan said quietly, we all let it happen. The room fell silent. Because collective responsibility offers no protection, and people were starting to protect themselves. By noon, the whispers had sharpened. Marcus pushed for it. Ethan didn't stop it. Olivia let it slide. The love triangle, once office gossip, had transformed into a narrative of favoritism and bias. Some said Olivia trusted Ethan too much. Others said she protected Marcus too long. None of it mattered, because perception was becoming reality. At 1:40 p.m., the tension finally detonated. Marcus slammed a folder onto the table. If we'd prioritized the demo over perfection, we wouldn't be here. Ethan stood. If we hadn't chased shortcuts, clients would still trust us. Marcus shot back. Trust doesn't matter if we don't survive long enough to use it. And survival without integrity isn't survival. The room froze. Olivia stepped forward. This ends now. Marcus turned to her. You chose him. Ethan blinked. What? Marcus's voice cracked with frustration. You always backed him, his caution, his delays, his methods. Olivia's expression hardened. I backed the approach that protected the product. That's not what it looked like. Silence. Because he had said what everyone had been thinking. Olivia took a slow breath. Do you think this was about either of you? She asked quietly. No one answered. She continued. I didn't choose Ethan. I didn't choose Marcus. I chose what kept Meridian credible. Her gaze swept the room. But you, all of you, turned professional disagreement into personal rivalry, and now we are paying for it. No one spoke, because she was right. Ethan sank into his chair, staring at the table. I didn't come here to compete, he said. I came here to build something. Marcus's voice softened, but only slightly. So did I. Their eyes met. For the first time, there was no hostility, just exhaustion and regret. At 4:13 p.m., Olivia's phone rang. She stepped into the hallway to answer. Yes. A pause. Her face went still. I understand. Thank you for informing me. She hung up and returned to the war room. Northbridge is reviewing their contract. No one reacted. They had run out of reactions. At 4:30 p.m., an email from HR appeared in Olivia's inbox. Subject: Incident accountability. Executive leadership requires identification of responsible parties for process failure. Please submit names for review. Names. Not processes, not systems. People. She stared at the screen for a long time, then closed her laptop. As the office emptied, Marcus approached Ethan. I never hated you, Marcus said. Ethan gave a tired half-smile. I know. I just didn't want to lose. Neither did I. Marcus looked around the darkening office. Looks like we both did. They stood in silence, not as rivals, not as friends, but as two men who had finally understood the cost of being right. Long after everyone left, Olivia remained. She walked the empty floor past dark monitors and silent desks. This was her responsibility. Not the love triangle, not the gossip, but the environment that allowed it to matter. She returned to the war room and opened her laptop. The HR email glowed on the screen. She began to type, then stopped, deleted everything, closed the laptop. Because some lines once crossed cannot be uncrossed, and naming a scapegoat would not restore what had been lost. By the end of the day, Meridian Tech had lost one major client and stood on the edge of losing more. Executives wanted blame, employees wanted protection. Trust, once broken, refused to return. The rivalry that began with glances and unspoken feelings had evolved into something far more destructive, a fracture in the foundation of a company. And as night settled over the silent office, one truth became impossible to ignore. The disaster was no longer technical. It was human. The truth no one saw. Thursday arrived with a stillness that felt unnatural. No one joked in the elevators. No one lingered at the coffee machine. Even the office lights seemed harsher, exposing fatigue etched into every face. The board meeting was scheduled for noon, and everyone knew what that meant. At 8:10 a.m., Olivia called the team into the war room, not to assign tasks, not to review logs, to speak. We've corrected all known discrepancies, she said. System stability is within acceptable thresholds. But this meeting isn't about metrics. She paused. It's about trust. No one moved. Marcus leaned against the table, arms crossed. Ethan sat forward, hands clasped. The rest of the team watched, waiting for instructions that wouldn't come. Whatever happens after today, Olivia continued, we face it as professionals. No blame shifting, no rewriting history. Her eyes lingered on Marcus and Ethan. Agreed? She asked. Marcus nodded once. Ethan followed. The team murmured assent. It was the closest they had come to unity in weeks. The executive floor felt like another world. Carpeted silence, glass walls, controlled temperature. At 11:58 a.m., Olivia, Marcus, and Ethan entered the boardroom. 6 board members sat along one side of a polished table. Daniel Harper stood near the screen, remote in hand. The presentation began with data, timelines, corrections, client notifications, current system health. Marcus explained product impacts. Ethan detailed technical remediation. Olivia addressed client communications and procedural safeguards. They spoke clearly, calmly, professionally. But the room remained unmoved, because numbers don't repair confidence. A board member, an older woman with silver hair and a precise voice, leaned forward. What caused the threshold adjustment? Silence settled. Marcus glanced at Ethan. Ethan looked at Olivia. Olivia answered. Pressure, she said. The woman's eyebrow lifted. Pressure does not change settings. People do. Olivia didn't look away. Then the answer is people under pressure. Another board member spoke. Was this a failure of leadership? The question hung in the air like a verdict waiting to be delivered. Olivia took a breath. Yes, she said. It was. Marcus's head snapped toward her. Ethan's stomach dropped. She continued, her voice steady. I allowed urgency to overshadow process. That is my responsibility. The room fell silent. The silver-haired board member tapped her pen lightly. And the interpersonal issues we've heard about, she asked, did they affect decision-making? Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Ethan felt heat rise in his face. Olivia answered without hesitation. Yes. No one spoke. She continued, her voice steady. There was rivalry, miscommunication, assumptions about favoritism. None of it was addressed early enough. That failure belongs to me. Marcus whispered, Olivia. But she didn't stop. However, she said, the narrative that this was a conflict over me is incorrect. The board members exchanged glances. She went on. I am in a committed relationship, she said. I have been for 3 years. The words landed like a shockwave. Marcus stared at her. Ethan blinked, stunned. One that I keep private, because my personal life is not a management tool. The rivalry that developed had nothing to do with encouragement from me, and everything to do with assumptions made by others. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. 3 years? He replayed every conversation, every look, every moment he had interpreted as possibility. None of it had been real. Ethan stared at the table, shame washing over him. All those late nights, the quiet hope, the belief that connection meant something more, all built on silence and projection. The disaster hadn't begun with love. It had begun with assumption. Daniel Harper cleared his throat. We appreciate the transparency. The silver-haired board member nodded. Accountability is noted, but consequences remain necessary. A document slid across the table. Meridian Tech will retain the Atlas platform, but leadership restructuring is required to restore client confidence. Marcus's pulse quickened. Ethan felt dread coil in his chest. Olivia remained still. The hallway outside the boardroom felt colder than before. No one spoke until they reached the elevator. Marcus finally said, Why didn't you tell us? Olivia met his gaze. Because it wasn't relevant. It was to us, he said quietly. That was the problem. Ethan swallowed. We made you the center of something you never asked for. She nodded once. Yes. The elevator doors opened. No one moved immediately, because stepping inside meant accepting what came next. Word spread quickly. Not the full story, never the full story, but enough. Leadership changes coming. Board intervention. Olivia took responsibility. The rumor about her relationship spread too, mutating as it traveled. Some felt embarrassed, others defensive. Many simply felt tired. Marcus sat at his desk, staring at the city skyline. He hadn't lost Olivia. He had never had her to lose. What he had lost was focus. Weeks of leadership spent competing instead of guiding. He whispered to himself, I did this. Not alone, but undeniably. Across the floor, Ethan packed away old notes, sketches of system improvements, ideas he had abandoned during the conflict. He realized how much time he had wasted trying to be seen instead of simply doing the work. Recognition earned through rivalry is hollow, and he felt the hollowness now. In her office, Olivia finally allowed herself to sit. For weeks, she had carried the weight of deadlines, egos, and unspoken tensions. Now the truth was out. Not a relief, but a release. She picked up her phone and typed a message. Long day, still standing. A reply came seconds later. Proud of you. Dinner tonight? She allowed herself a small, private smile. Then she stood, because the consequences of truth were still unfolding. By the end of the day, the illusion that had fueled the rivalry was gone. Olivia was never a prize. Marcus and Ethan had never been competitors for her heart. The love triangle had existed only in perception, and perception had nearly destroyed a company. Now the board demanded consequences. Leadership would change, reputations would shift, careers would be rewritten. And as Meridian Tech braced for the final decisions, one truth stood unchallenged. The greatest disasters are not born from malice. They are born from assumptions left unspoken until it is too late to undo the damage. The cost of misunderstanding. Friday morning arrived without ceremony. No announcements, no all-hands meeting, no reassuring emails from leadership. Just an unusual number of closed-door meetings on the executive floor and a quiet tension that settled over Meridian Tech like a coming storm. Everyone knew decisions had been made. No one knew who would pay for them. At 9:02 a.m., Marcus received a meeting request. Subject, leadership review. Time, 9:30 a.m. Location, executive conference room. 2 minutes later, Ethan's inbox chimed. Subject, role evaluation. Time, 9:45 a.m. Location, HR office. He stared at the screen. Across the room, Marcus looked up. Their eyes met. No words were needed. The executive conference room felt even colder than it had the day before. Daniel Harper sat at the head of the table. An HR director sat beside him. A printed folder lay in front of Marcus. Thank you for coming, Harper said. Marcus nodded. Let's skip to it. Harper didn't argue. The board has determined that Atlas requires new product leadership to restore client confidence. Marcus exhaled slowly. You're replacing me. We're restructuring, Harper said carefully. Marcus almost laughed. With someone who doesn't come with headlines. Silence. Harper continued. Your contributions to Meridian are acknowledged. However, recent events have eroded client trust in the product's leadership. Marcus looked at the folder. Severance terms, transition assistance, a non-disparagement clause. He didn't open it. I built Atlas, he said quietly. Harper nodded, and now someone else will stabilize it. The words were clinical, efficient, final. Marcus stood. For what it's worth, this was not about one decision. It was about a pattern. Marcus paused at the door. He knew what pattern meant. Distraction, rivalry, loss of focus. He left without another word. Ethan's meeting was smaller, a single HR representative, a neutral tone, a document already prepared. Your technical expertise is not in question. However, the board believes a fresh structure is necessary for team cohesion. He swallowed. Am I being fired? Your role is being eliminated, she replied gently. You are welcome to apply for future openings after a review period. The distinction felt meaningless. He looked at the paper. Severance, references, exit procedures. I stayed, he said quietly, more to himself than to her. She offered a sympathetic smile. Sometimes staying isn't enough. He signed, because there was nothing else to do. Marcus exited the elevator just as Ethan stepped out of HR. They saw each other immediately. Two men who had spent weeks circling each other like rivals, now standing on the same side of an invisible line. Marcus spoke first. You too? Ethan nodded. A long pause. Then Marcus let out a breath that was almost a laugh. We really did it. Ethan managed a faint smile. Yeah, we did. News travels fast in offices. By noon, people knew. No official announcement, just the sight of two senior leaders packing their desks. Some coworkers offered awkward condolences. Others avoided eye contact. A few whispered. Because failure, even shared, is contagious. Marcus packed methodically. Notebooks, product sketches, a framed photo of his first Atlas prototype. Ethan packed quietly. Reference books, a coffee mug, sticky notes filled with half-finished ideas. Neither had much to take with them. Most of what they had built stayed behind. Olivia approached Marcus first. I'm sorry, she said. He shook his head. Don't be. This was inevitable. She studied him. You're a good leader, Marcus. You just lost sight of what mattered. He gave a tired smile. I thought winning mattered. Her voice softened. Winning what? He didn't answer, because now he understood the question. She found Ethan near the elevators. I should have protected the team sooner, she said. He shook his head. You tried. We didn't listen. A pause. I never meant to make things harder for you, he added. You didn't. You made them human. He let out a breath. That's one word for it. Outside the building, Marcus and Ethan stood on the sidewalk, boxes in hand. For the first time since they met, there was no tension between them, no competition, no unspoken questions, just two men unemployed on a Friday afternoon. Marcus broke the silence. She told the truth. Ethan nodded. Yeah. I built a rivalry in my head, Marcus said, turned it into motivation, then obsession. I thought if I proved myself, I'd matter more, Ethan admitted. Marcus looked at him. We mattered, just not the way we wanted. They stood in silence as employees streamed past them, heading to lunch, to meetings, to futures that still included Meridian Tech. Inside the building, Olivia received another email. Northbridge Logistics had terminated their contract. She closed her eyes briefly. 2 major clients gone, more at risk. The restructuring had begun, but consequences don't stop when decisions are made. They ripple outward. That evening, Olivia stood alone in the war room one last time that week. The whiteboards had been erased. The dashboards were stable. From a technical perspective, the crisis was contained. From a human perspective, the cost was immeasurable. 2 careers derailed, a team fractured, client trust shaken, all fueled by assumptions that had never been spoken out loud. At 6:42 p.m., Olivia received a text. Marcus, take care of Atlas. It deserves better than what we gave it. She stared at the message for a long moment, then replied, so do you. Across town, Ethan sat in his apartment, his severance envelope unopened. He opened his laptop and pulled up the Atlas architecture, public documentation now. He studied it not with bitterness but with clarity. He had helped build something meaningful. He had also helped break it. Both truths would follow him. By nightfall, the consequences were undeniable. Marcus and Ethan had lost their jobs. Olivia remained, not victorious, but accountable. Meridian Tech continued, altered, diminished, but alive. The love triangle that never truly existed still managed to destroy careers, because perception shapes behavior, behavior shapes decisions, and decisions shape outcomes. As the city lights flickered on, 3 lives moved in different directions, bound not by romance, but by a shared lesson learned too late. Not every battle is real, but the damage from fighting one can be. The cost of collapse. The building reopened on a gray Monday, under a sky that matched everyone's mood. Not with fanfare, not with optimism, just with a quiet email from facilities. Floor 23 is operational. For most employees, the message felt like a closing chapter. For others, it felt like a reopening wound. Daniel Reed read the email 3 times before closing his laptop. He no longer worked there. The company-issued device had been remotely wiped, his badge deactivated, his email archived. Still, habit made him check. He sat at his kitchen table, coffee growing cold, staring at the reflection of himself in the black screen. He had lost his job, he had lost his reputation, and worst of all, he had lost the version of himself he used to respect. Across the city, Ethan Cole stood outside the glass tower that had once defined his ambition. A cardboard box sat on the passenger seat of his car. Inside, a framed team photo, a stress ball shaped like a rocket, a coffee mug that read, "Ship it," his termination letter. He hadn't opened the letter since HR handed it to him. He didn't need to. The words were burned into memory. Conduct detrimental to workplace safety and operations. He watched employees stream into the building. Some glanced at him, most didn't. He realized something brutal. The company had already moved on. Lena Park remained employed, but the word employed felt hollow. Her responsibilities had been reassigned, her authority reduced, her reputation shattered. No one said it outright, but the looks carried the message, you caused this. She hadn't, but she also hadn't stopped it. She sat at her desk on floor 19, far from the rebuilt floor 23, staring at a blank document. The cursor blinked like an accusation. She thought about Daniel's earnestness, Ethan's intensity, the arguments, the tension, the day everything broke. And she thought about the truth she never told them. She wasn't in love with either of them. 2 weeks after the collapse, a rumor surfaced quietly in Slack channels and lunch conversations. Lena Park had been engaged, not to anyone in the office, to a high school teacher in Portland named Marcus. They had been together for 3 years. The engagement had been private, long distance, deliberate. No one in the office knew, because Lena believed her personal life should stay personal. But secrets have gravity, and gravity pulls everything down. Daniel heard the rumor from a former coworker over coffee. He laughed at first, a sharp, disbelieving sound. Engaged? He said. That's a joke. It's not, his friend replied gently. She never dated anyone here. We just assumed. Assumed. The word landed like a brick. Daniel replayed every interaction. Her polite smiles, her careful boundaries, her neutral tone. He had filled in the blanks with his own hopes. He had mistaken professionalism for intimacy. He had built a fantasy and then fought to defend it. Ethan learned the truth differently. A forwarded LinkedIn update. Lena Park is celebrating a new life chapter. Attached, a photo. Lena standing beside a man in a navy blazer, both smiling softly, her hand resting on his chest, a ring visible. No office lighting, no corporate polish, just 2 people who looked certain. He stared at the image until his phone dimmed. He thought about the confrontation, the shouting, the moment he grabbed Daniel's shirt, the alarms, the evacuation, the collapse. All for a story he had written in his own head. The rebuilt floor looked nothing like before. Open spaces replaced cubicles, glass walls replaced opaque ones, emergency signage glowed brighter, policies were stricter. It was safer, it was colder. The company called it a new era of transparency. Employees called it the scar. 3 months later, Lena sat in a conference room with HR. They praised her technical skills, acknowledged her tenure, then offered a severance package. Your continued presence, HR explained carefully, has become a distraction to team cohesion. Corporate language for people blame you. She signed the papers with steady hands. For the first time since the disaster, she felt something close to relief. Daniel took contract work in smaller startups, places where no one knew his name. He avoided office politics, avoided emotional entanglements, avoided anything that felt like the old him. He learned to ask instead of assume, to listen instead of project. But some nights he still woke to the sound of alarms that weren't there. Ethan moved back to his hometown in Ohio and joined his brother's construction business. Real structures, real consequences, no corporate theater. He found comfort in blueprints that didn't lie. He never again confused competition with connection. Lena moved to Portland. She married Marcus in a small ceremony under overcast skies, the kind that felt honest rather than gloomy. She took a job at a nonprofit tech initiative, building systems that helped schools coordinate resources. No glass towers, no power plays, just work that mattered. None of them spoke again. No dramatic reunion, no apologies, no closure scenes. Just 3 lives altered by one preventable disaster. The investigation report later concluded, the primary cause of the Floor 23 structural failure was unauthorized equipment relocation during an active emergency response, compounded by personnel conflict. Cold, technical, precise. But beneath the language lay the truth: miscommunication, assumptions, ego, silence. Epilogue. 1 year later. On the anniversary of the collapse, the company sent a message honoring resilience and growth. Most employees skimmed it. Some deleted it. A few paused. Across 3 different cities, Daniel, Ethan, and Lena each experienced the same fleeting thought. If we had just told the truth, then the moment passed. Because life does not rewind. It only moves forward over fault lines we pretend aren't there, until the ground gives way beneath us. End of story.